I woke up in a nursing home, my son said. I forgot everything. But when I opened the envelope he forgot. I woke to the sound of something sharp and metallic striking the floor, maybe a cart, maybe a tray, but it sliced through the fog in my head like a blade. For a moment I did not know where I was. My eyelids felt heavy, glued together by something thicker than sleep, and the air carried a sterile chill I had never allowed in my home. I tried to lift my hand, and even that felt borrowed, as if it belonged to someone older than me. Someone weaker. Someone forgot. When I finally pried my eyes open, I saw white walls first, then the metal railing of the bed, then the pale blue curtain drawn halfway across the room. The ceiling lights were too bright, too sharp. They made the silence feel louder. That was when I heard his voice, steady, cold, and frighteningly casual. Yeah, she does not remember anything, Carl said. She has been confused for weeks. You know how it is. My son. My boy. The child I carried in my arms through storms. The child I fed when he was too little to hold his bottle. The child who once clung to my skirt, crying because a neighbor's dog scared him. But the man speaking now was not that boy. A nurse responded softly. She said your name when she came in. She seemed aware. Carl laughed. Not with joy, not with affection. It was the kind of laugh someone uses when they want to dismiss another person entirely. She is imagining things, he said. She does that. It is just the age and the confusion. She is not capable of living on her own anymore. I tried to speak, but only a dry rasp escaped me. Something in my throat felt caught, like a stone. I lifted one shaking hand toward him, not to stop him, just to remind him I was still here. He did not even look. Instead, he said louder this time, so the nurse could hear every word. Catherine has not been herself for a long time. Keeping her at home only makes everything harder for us. She does not belong there anymore. Us. He said us, as if I had become an outsider to my own family. I listened, unable to sit up, as he added, leaving her here is the right choice. Let the professionals deal with her. At home, she just gets in the way. The words struck deeper than anything he had said to me my entire life, not because they were cruel. Cruelty from Carl was no longer foreign to me, but because of the ease with which he said them, as if they were facts. As if this was simply the natural order of things. The young moving on, the old swept aside. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. The nurse cleared her throat gently, perhaps discomforted by how casually he discarded me. She still seems aware of where she is, she said. Patients often feel scared on the first day. Sometimes all they need is reassurance from family. Family. What a cruel word when spoken aloud beside the person who had become the very source of my fear. Carl answered, You do not have to sugarcoat it. She is lost, and honestly, it is for the best that she forgets things, makes everything easier. Easier for whom? I lowered my gaze to my lap, where my fingers curled into the thin blanket. My mind felt slow, like a heavy door struggling to swing open. But I remembered the glass of water he had handed me last night. I remembered the bitterness on my tongue. I remembered asking, What is this? And Carl saying, Just something to help you rest. He did not meet my eyes then, either. As I shifted, something crinkled beneath my hand. A faint, papery sound. I reached toward the pocket of the sweater he had shoved onto me as they hurried me out of the house. I remembered him pulling clothes from drawers without letting me choose, telling me I was being difficult when I asked where we were going. My fingers brushed the corner of an envelope. I slid it out. The paper was worn soft around the edges, creased like it had been handled too many times. It was sealed, though the seal looked old, as if it had been closed years ago and forgotten in some drawer until now. Why was it in my pocket? Had Carl meant to give it to someone here? Had he mistaken it for something else when he stuffed my things together? Or had he dropped it into my sweater without realizing? I did not open it. Not yet. But holding it made something stir inside me, something I had not felt in a long time. A quiet, persistent thrum, like a heartbeat trapped under paper. I hid the envelope beneath the blanket just as Carl finally turned toward me. His eyes were flat. "Do you see?" he told the nurse. "She is barely aware. She cannot even sit up without help." I met his stare. I wanted to say his name, Carl, not in anger but in the desperate hope that some small part of him might remember the woman who taught him to tie his shoes, who stitched his Halloween costumes, who stayed awake through every fever. But nothing came out. He did not wait for me to try again. He simply said, "She is safer here, better here, for everyone." Then he walked away. The nurse touched my arm gently. "Do you want some water?" she asked. I shook my head, still feeling the weight of the envelope hidden against my side. I did not know yet what was inside. But I knew one thing. It was the first thing in a very long time that Carl had not taken from me. I once believed pain had limits until the day I gave birth. I do not remember the screams or the lights, only the silence after hours of struggle. One of my sons never cried, never opened his eyes. He slipped away before I could touch him. I nearly followed him. My body tore apart, and the doctors said the bleeding would not stop unless they removed my uterus. I remember Jim standing in the doorway as the doctor explained I would never carry another child. He did not take my hand. He punched the wall and looked at me with a hatred I had never seen before. "You could not even keep my son alive," he said. "You cannot even do the one thing a woman is supposed to do." Those words branded themselves into me, but the deeper wound came later, when the nurses whispered that he had left the hospital early. I spent the first night alone, staring at the empty bassinet where a baby's blanket still lay folded and untouched. From that day on, Jim treated me as if I were a failure walking around in skin. The dead twin was not a tragedy to him, it was an accusation. And I became the accused. Years passed, and the space between us widened. When we finally adopted Carl as an infant, a boy with no family to claim him, I thought, maybe, just maybe, life was giving us a second chance. I poured every piece of love I had into that child. I held him against my chest until our heartbeats fell into rhythm. I whispered promises into the soft curve of his ear. I told myself that even if I could not bring life into the world, I could still raise it. But Jim, he never truly accepted Carl, and he made sure Carl felt that difference. When Carl was 6 or 7, I overheard the first seed Jim planted. Carl had walked into the living room, holding a drawing he made at school, something with stick figures and a house. Jim glanced at him, just one glance, and said, "You do not look like me. Ask your mother what she was doing when I was not around." It was said casually, like an offhand remark, but it was poison. Poison sinks slowly, then permanently. Jim repeated versions of that line for years. Sometimes he said it while drunk, sometimes while pulling on his coat to leave yet again, sometimes in front of relatives who smirked as though they knew secrets I did not. And Carl, who once ran into my arms when thunderstorms scared him, started looking at me differently, as if he was waiting for me to confess something I had not done. School made it worse. Children are cruel without meaning to be. They mimic what they hear at home. Carl came home one afternoon with scraped knuckles and tears he refused to let fall. "They said I am not my father's son," he muttered. "They said you were with someone else." I knelt down, trying to take his hands, but he pulled away. His voice trembled not with fear, but with shame. "I am your mother," I said. "That is the only truth that matters." He did not believe me, and when he got into fights defending my name, he was punished for it, suspended from school, humiliated in front of classmates. Jim did not comfort him. Jim shouted, "Why do you defend her? Do you think she is worth it?" One day, a classmate delivered the final blow. Carl came home shaking, eyes blazing, and confronted me with all the fury a child can hold. "Dad left us because of you," he yelled. "He left because you betrayed him. Tell me the truth. Tell me what you did." I tried to speak. I tried to explain. "No, Carl, I never—" "Stop lying," he screamed. "Everyone knows. Everyone says it. Why will you not say it?" His face twisted not just with anger, but with desperation. He needed someone to blame for his father's abandonment, and I was the easiest target, the only target. I showed him the medical records from the hospital, the surgery report, the doctor's notes, the chart explaining why I could not have biological children. Carl slapped them from my hands. "I do not want papers," he shouted. "I want the truth." The truth, simple, yet impossible. I almost told him then that he was adopted, that he had never been unwanted, that he had been chosen with love. But behind his anger, I saw fear. If he learned he was not Jim's son, he would feel fully abandoned, unanchored in a world that had already mocked him for being different. So I chose silence over defending myself, and in that silence, Jim's lies took root. Carl grew older, colder, and eventually stopped asking questions. He believed the worst of me because it was easier than facing the truth. I carried that truth alone, like a mother mourning a child she never got to raise. Time does not heal everything. Some wounds deepen. Some betrayals echo forever. And some children grow up hating the person who loved them most. I wish I could say the night before Carl took me to the nursing home was a blur. But the truth is, I remember every terrible word. My mind was slow, my body felt heavy, but my ears caught everything. Pain sharpens certain senses. Even the dying candle hears the wind. I had gone to bed early because my joints were aching. I heard Carl and his wife in the kitchen, talking in their quick, secretive tones. At first I thought they were discussing bills, a leaking pipe, something ordinary. But then her voice slipped through the doorway, careless and cruel. "We cannot get the loan if she is still living here," she said. "The bank requires the property to be in our possession. Legally, fully." Carl muttered something, but she cut him off. "And her clutter? Her old furniture? Her room? All of it takes up space we could use. We need a nursery. We need an office. We cannot build a future around a woman who cannot even remember what day it is." I felt a sting in my eyes, the kind that comes from humiliation rather than sadness. I kept still on the bed, breathing quietly, hoping for one hint of kindness, 1 second of hesitation, something. Instead, Carl answered, "She has been making me look bad my entire life. People still talk about the past. They think I am the product of her mistakes." The product. Not the child. Not the son. A product. He lowered his voice, but I still heard. "She embarrassed me every year growing up. Every time someone questioned who I was. Every time someone repeated what Dad said. She never fixed anything. She just stood there, pretending innocence. Pretending." That was what he believed in me. His wife clicked her tongue. "So stop dragging this out. Just give her the pills. If she sleeps through the drive, she will not fight. Once she is in the nursing home, the staff will take her. They always do." Carl hesitated. "What if she remembers too much?" She laughed softly. "She hardly remembers who she is. The less she knows, the easier it is for us. We sign the papers, get the house, and we move forward. It is time to clean the slate. Clean the slate, erase me." I lay frozen under my blanket. The air felt thick. Not with fear, I had lived with fear before. This was different. This was the sting of becoming an inconvenience to the very people you raised, the people you sacrificed for. There is a special kind of pain in hearing your existence measured in property value. Then Carl walked into my room. He held a glass of water and 2 white pills. His expression was strangely polite, like a doctor who has already decided the diagnosis. "Mom," he said, "you need rest. Take these." I looked into his eyes, searching for the boy I once rocked to sleep. The curled eyelashes, the soft gaze, the warmth. I found nothing. His wife stood behind him, her arms folded. "If she refuses," she whispered, "we will be here all night." And I am done waiting. I knew then they were going through with it. For money, for convenience, but also for something uglier. Carl wanted distance from the woman he believed ruined his childhood, the woman he thought drove his father away. The tragedy was that he did not know the truth, but the greater tragedy was that he did not care to ask. I took the pills. What choice did I have? A person can fight many things in life, but there is no defense against betrayal from your own blood. The room wavered, their voices tangled into murmurs. "She will sleep through the whole thing," his wife said. Good, Carl replied. I do not want a scene. I felt my body sink deeper into the mattress, not from comfort, but from sedation. I heard them packing quickly, my clothes, my toothbrush, a sweater. They did not let me choose anything. They did not ask what I wanted. They did not speak to me as a person. I heard the soft rip of drawers, the metallic clink of hangers, the hurry of people cleaning a house before moving out of it. I could not lift my head. My eyelids felt glued shut. Then, something unexpected happened. Carl's hands searched through my closet, pulling things out carelessly, and I heard the unmistakable sound of paper rubbing against fabric. He muttered, "What is this old thing?" Then he shoved something into the pocket of my sweater. I could not see it then. I barely registered the gesture. Only later would I know it was the envelope. My breathing slowed. My limbs turned to sand. Through the haze, I heard the final words spoken before everything went dark. "No one needs her anymore," his wife said. And Carl replied, with a calmness colder than any winter I ever lived through. "Exactly. This is the best decision for all of us. It is one thing to be old. It is another to be unwanted. But to be unwanted by the child you raised, the child you fed, the child you defended, even when he spat venom at you, that is a grief deeper than death." The world dimmed. And the last thing I felt was not the pull of sleep. It was the weight of knowing my son did not just abandon me. He planned it. I waited until the room finally fell silent, until the nurse's footsteps faded down the hall. Only then did I reach under the blanket and pull out the envelope I had hidden against my ribs. I remembered the faint rustle from the night before, Carl shoving my clothes into a bag, his hand brushing something paper. He must have stuffed it into my sweater without realizing. The envelope felt strangely old, the edges worn soft by time. My hands trembled as I slid a finger beneath the brittle flap. The seal cracked open like thin ice. I unfolded the first page, and the world shifted. A death certificate. Male infant, twin B. The date matched Carl's birthday, and the day I almost died. I touched the ink, the only trace of the child I never got to hold. I turned to the next document, the surgical report. Emergency hysterectomy required to save patient's life. The words reminded me of everything I lost: my child, my body, the future Jim blamed me for ruining. I folded it carefully and reached for the final paper. My breath caught. Carl's name, the adoption certificate. The truth I carried alone for 20 years, now trembling in my son's hands, ready to break his world the way mine once broke. My eyes hovered over Carl's name, printed in the shaky typewriter font hospitals used back then, followed by mine and Jim's. Adoptive parents. There it was, the truth I had carried alone, the truth that could have spared him so much anger if only he had wanted to hear it. I remembered holding Carl's tiny body against my chest for the first time. I remembered the nurse saying, "He calmed down when you touched him." I remembered thinking that perhaps the universe had not abandoned me after all. But I never told him. I never told him because I saw the way he clung to Jim when he was little, the way he looked for any sign that he belonged. And I could not bear the idea of him believing he had been unwanted twice, once by the world, and again by his own father. My fingers moved to the next folded sheet. It was a letter, one written by the doctor who had handled Carl's adoption. Mrs. Dunn. It began in small, tidy handwriting. "This child needs a home. He came into the world without one. You have suffered deeply, but I believe that raising him will give both of you something life tried to take away. You are saving a life, whether you see it that way or not." I read those lines several times. I had forgotten this letter existed, forgotten that someone once saw me, not as a failure, but as a mother who chose love intentionally. Then, near the bottom of the envelope, I found one last piece of paper folded smaller than the rest, yellowed with age. It was my handwriting. I recognized the slant, the uneven strokes where my hand trembled. It was a letter I started for Carl when he was 12, a letter I never finished. The top line read, "My dear Carl, I need to tell you something important." Below it, more hesitant words. "I would rather have you hate me than let you believe you were never chosen. I want you to know the truth someday. but only when your heart is ready. I remembered writing it. I remembered stopping halfway, terrified that telling him he had no blood connection to Jim would break him entirely. I tucked the unfinished letter away and never tried again. Reading it now was like opening a wound I had kept stitched for years. I folded it gently and pressed it to my chest. A single whisper slipped out of me so soft I almost did not hear it myself. You were the child I chose, Carl. Yet you chose to believe the entire world, except your mother. The room felt unbearably still. Not empty, just still, in a way that made every breath feel too loud, every heartbeat too slow. I closed the envelope with trembling hands, holding it close as if it were the last warm thing in my life. And as the truth settled over me like evening light, the ache in my chest did not come from the documents I held. It came from the realization that they had been the truth all along, and Carl had never cared to ask for it. Carl returned the next afternoon. I heard him before I saw him, his footsteps quick, irritated, beating a rhythm of impatience across the hallway. When he entered the room, he did not greet me, or if I needed anything. He held a stack of papers in one hand, folded and creased from his tight grip, and dropped them onto the small wooden table at the foot of my bed with a violent thud. "Sign," he said. "Sign all of it. You do not even know what day it is, so do not pretend you know what these are." I lifted my eyes to him. His face was stiff, jaw clenched, the way it used to be when he was a child trying not to cry after someone insulted him. Except now, the softness of childhood was gone. What remained was a man shaped by resentment, sharpened by misunderstanding, hardened by lies. I did not reach for the papers. I reached instead into the drawer where I had hidden the envelope through the night, sliding it out carefully, the corners still warm from where I had held it against my chest. Carl frowned when he saw it. "What is that?" he demanded. I did not answer. My hands were steady, steadier than they had been in a long time. I placed the envelope on the table beside his stack of documents and gently pushed it toward him. His eyes narrowed as if he expected it to bite him. "What is this supposed to be?" he said. "Another excuse? Another story? Mother, I am not in the mood for your games." I did not speak. I did not need to. Something inside me had settled, maybe exhaustion, maybe acceptance, maybe the last bit of courage a mother keeps hidden for when everything else is lost. He snatched the envelope and tore it open. The first paper slipped out, fluttering slightly as it fell into his hand. His brow furrowed. "What is this?" he said. "A death certificate? Who is this?" He scanned the words, confusion creeping across his face. Twin B? Male? Newborn? Date of birth? His voice grew smaller with each phrase he read. Then he looked at me sharply, searching my face for a lie. "You had twins? Why did nobody tell me? Why did I never hear about this?" I held his gaze. My silence was an answer he did not want. He shook his head violently and unfolded the second document. This time, he read only the first line before his hand trembled. "Emergency hysterectomy," he whispered. "Permanent infertility." His lips parted as if the air had been knocked out of him. You could never have children again?" he said, in a broken, instinctive echo of the language I used to soothe him with as a toddler. Then he switched back to English without realizing it. "So you could not have children after that? You never told me. You never told me anything." He looked at me as if he wanted to accuse me, but the guilt was already spreading across his expression, like ink soaking into thin paper. Then he reached for the third document. His fingers froze mid-air when he saw his own name at the top. The adoption certificate. It was as if time stopped. Something inside him cracked open, shock first, then denial, then terror, then an anger that was not truly anger, but the frantic panic of a man watching the ground beneath him fall away. "May, no, this cannot be real," he said. "You adopted me? You adopted me because you could not have children of your own?" He looked around the room, searching for something to anchor him. He looked at the papers again. "Does this mean I was abandoned? That I was someone nobody wanted? That you took me because you had no other choice?" His voice rose, high and trembling. "Is that it? I was a replacement?" My heart clenched. Not from his words, but from the child inside him who was still bruised, still vulnerable, still desperate for belonging. "Carl," I said softly. But he stepped back, shaking his head violently. "No, no, you are lying. You are pretending. You always pretend to be the victim. You always hide things. Tell me this is fake. Tell me you made this up to get sympathy." I watched the fear in him turn to rage, because rage was easier for him to hold. "Tell me!" he shouted. I let the silence sit long enough for him to feel it. Then I finally spoke. "No, Carl." My voice was quiet, steady, stripped of anything but truth. "I was not able to carry a child again. I lost my son, I lost my body, and I lost the life I thought I would have. I was empty. I was grieving. And then I found you." His breath hitched, uneven. "I chose you," I said, "not because I had no other choice, but because when I held you, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. I thought the world was giving me a second chance." He stared at me, eyes wet, jaw trembling. "But I was wrong," I added, not cruelly, but with the weight of all the years between us. "I thought raising you would make life better. I thought loving you would heal the wounds inside me, but instead you believed every voice except mine, even when I tried to explain, even when I begged you to listen." Carl made a sound like a broken breath, somewhere between a sob and a question. "I did not tell you because I wanted you to feel like you belonged," I said. "I wanted you to believe you were wanted, chosen, loved, not an accident, not a burden, not the abandoned child the world tried to make you believe you were." His legs seemed to give way. He dropped into the chair beside the bed, burying his face in his hands. "I did not want you to feel alone," I whispered. "So I carried that truth alone." Carl cried. Not the tears of a man, heavy and controlled, but the tears of a child, wild, broken, unguarded. Or the first time, I saw not the boy he once was, but the man who had never truly grown past his wounds. The boy I had loved. The boy who no longer saw me as his mother. Carl sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, his face still damp from the tears he had been fighting. He could not look at me, not directly. His eyes darted from the floor to the papers on the table and back to the floor again, as if the truth might rearrange itself if he avoided it long enough. Then he whispered, barely audible, "Dad told me I was not his." The words did not surprise me. They hurt, yes, but not with the sting of revelation. It was an old wound, one I had known existed even before Carl ever found the courage to give it shape. "He told me," Carl continued, voice tight, that you had someone else, that he stayed with you out of pity, that he tried to be a father, but he could not pretend when he looked at me." He ran a hand through his hair, pulling at the roots like he wanted to rip the memories out. "He said you were the reason our family fell apart, that you ruined his life, that I was the reminder." He was shaking slightly, not from anger at Jim, but from the realization that he had built his entire identity on a lie told by a man who abandoned both of us. I let the silence settle. Sometimes truth needs space to breathe before it can be spoken. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. "Carl, when he said those things, who did you believe?" He stared ahead at nothing. His throat worked before he spoke. "I believed whatever made everything hurt less." He exhaled, defeated. "I believed whatever made me feel like I was not the problem. If I believed you were guilty, then I did not have to wonder why I was so different. I did not have to ask why he treated me the way he did. I did not have to face the possibility that he might not have wanted me at all." His voice cracked. "Blaming you was easier." I nodded slowly. I had known that truth long before he said it. I had seen it in the way he flinched when people mentioned Jim, in the way he bristled whenever I offered explanations. He was not searching for truth. He had been searching for relief. And Jim had handed him the easiest version. "Your father," I said quietly, "wanted to leave long before you were old enough to understand anything. He wanted a different life, a simpler life, a life without responsibility. Blaming me allowed him to walk out without looking like the one who ran." Carl finally looked at me, eyes wide with something fragile and painful. Did he ever love me? The question was a blade. I took a moment before answering, because truth should never be used as a weapon against a wounded child, even when that child is grown. Jim loved what made him feel powerful, I said. He loved admiration, control, being the man people praised. But love, true love, does not turn its back and throw stones at those left behind. Carl swallowed hard. He told me you were the liar, that you were the reason he left. He said you were not enough. I felt something inside me grow heavier, but not bitter, just certain. Your father lied to you, I said, because it made leaving easier, because it allowed him to rewrite the story in a way that kept his hands clean. Carl wiped his face with the heel of his palm. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think he had a reason to stay away from me. I wanted to think you were the problem, because if you were the problem, then I did not have to wonder what was wrong with me. His shoulders sagged under the weight of those words. It is easier to hate the person who stays, I said softly, than the one who walks away. He closed his eyes, and for a moment, he was not a grown man. He was a boy of 7 again, hearing his father accuse his mother of things she did not do, clinging to any explanation that would ease the sting of being unwanted. He whispered, "He said so many things, and I never even questioned them." "I know," I replied. "I knew all along." Carl opened his eyes, meeting mine with a rawness I had not seen in decades. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not want to know the truth then. I do not know if I can accept it now." I nodded once. "It is not the truth that hurts," I said. "It is how long you chose to live without it." And for the first time since he was a child, Carl had no defense, no accusation, no shield. Only the quiet collapse of a belief that had shaped his entire life, and the painful understanding that the man he trusted most was the one who betrayed him first. I did not sleep that night. Not because of fear, not because of the unfamiliar bed or the faint hum of machines in the hallway. I stayed awake because, for the first time in years, I knew exactly what I had to do. The truth had finally been spoken aloud, and there are truths that, once freed, cannot be folded back into silence. By sunrise, a nurse came in to check on me. She asked whether I wanted breakfast. I said no. What I wanted was a pen. She brought one without question. I sat up slowly, my back stiff from the thin mattress, and pulled the papers the social worker had given me the day before. I read them carefully. I read every word. Then, I asked to make a call. They let me speak privately to an attorney the facility worked with. I told him I needed my will rewritten. When he asked whom I wanted my estate to go to, I said, "Children who do not have a home, children who were abandoned before they even learned to walk, children like the infant Carl once was." I heard his sharp breath through the phone. There was a pause. "Mrs. Dunn," he said gently, "do you understand that means your son?" "My son," I interrupted quietly, "made himself a stranger long ago." He hesitated again, then asked whether I wanted to remove Carl from all inheritance and legal authority. My answer came without trembling. Yes. Remove him entirely. When I hung up, I felt lighter, as if a chain had come off my chest. I knew what would happen when he found out, but regret had no seat at my table anymore. Later that afternoon, 2 representatives from the Adult Protective Services arrived. The nurse had reported the bruising on my arm and the unusual sedation the night I was admitted. I did not want to humiliate Carl. I did not want revenge. But I told the truth, word for word. The pills, the forced ride, the dismissive cruelty. Their pens scribbled faster with every sentence. One of them asked, "Mrs. Dunn, do you feel safe with your son?" I said the only thing I could. "I do not feel like his mother anymore." They exchanged a look. Notes were made. Papers were documented. When they left, a different kind of silence filled the room, one that felt like closure. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. But late in the afternoon, Carl returned. He looked as though someone had shaken him awake violently. His eyes were swollen, his hair disheveled, and his steps uneven, as if he did not quite know how to walk toward me. In his hands were the papers I had signed with the attorney earlier. How could you do this? He demanded, though the anger in his voice faltered. How could you cut me out? All of it? Everything? I watched him carefully. There was desperation in his eyes, not greed, not exactly. It was the panic of a man realizing that the person he had taken for granted might no longer be his safety net. You have no right, he said. I am your son. I folded my hands in my lap. Are you? I asked softly. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked at the adoption papers sticking out of his pocket as if they had burned a hole through him. She was not supposed to show me those, he muttered, almost to himself. You were supposed to tell me. I let out a long, tired breath. You never wanted the truth. Only someone to blame. He flinched. Before he could speak again, 2 APS agents entered the room. Carl stiffened as they approached. Carl Dunn? One of them asked. He nodded, confused. We need to inform you that an investigation has been opened regarding the sedation and unauthorized relocation of your mother. Carl turned to me, betrayed. You told them? I told the truth, I said. Something you avoided for 20 years. He tried to defend himself. I was trying to take care of you. No, I interrupted gently. You were trying to get rid of me. His entire body sagged. The agents stepped aside, making it clear they were not here to arrest him, only to protect me and document what had been done. Carl slowly approached my bedside, ignoring their presence. Mother, he whispered, his voice cracking. I am sorry. I swear I am sorry. I did not know any of it. His knees weakened into a trembling crouch, as if the weight of his own choices finally pinned him to the floor, clutching the blanket near my hand like a drowning man grabbing a piece of wood. Please, he begged, give me a chance to make this right. Let me be your son again. Let me take care of you. Let me start over, please. He reached for my hand, and for the briefest moment, I almost let him hold it. Old habits almost pulled me back into the role I had lived my whole life. The mother who forgives, the mother who absorbs all blame, the mother who makes room for those who hurt her. But I had made too many promises to myself in the dark hours of the morning. I pulled my hand away. The movement was small, but it was the clearest sentence I had spoken all day. Carl stared at me, stunned. Mom, I looked at him steadily, letting the weight of 2 decades settle between us. I kept the truth from you so you would not feel abandoned, I said. But you abandoned me long before today. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I carried your pain, I continued, my voice steady, even when you used it to blame me. I carried your father's lies so you could keep a piece of him to love. I carried the weight of your anger because I thought someday you would see me clearly. I leaned forward, just enough that he could not mistake my words for anything but finality. But now, I am setting both of us free. His face crumpled. He shook his head violently. No, no, please do not say that. Please do not do this to me. I stood. My legs were weak, but my resolve was not. From today on, I whispered, you are no longer my son. Carl gasped, as if something inside him had been torn out. I release you, I said. The way you have released me your entire life. He collapsed forward, sobbing so loudly, the hallway echoed with it. The agents stepped closer, uncertain whether to intervene, but I lifted a hand to stop them. I did not look back at him. I walked toward the door, every step closing a chapter I had clung to for far too long. Just before I crossed the threshold, I heard Carl's voice break into a desperate cry. Mother, do not leave me. But he had left me years ago, and this time, I kept walking. I did not expect peace to arrive quietly, yet it did. It came in the form of a key placed in my palm, the manager of the senior apartment smiling as he handed it over. Unit 3B, he said. It is small, but it is yours. Mine. A word that had not belonged to me in a long time. I moved into a modest apartment for independent seniors, no family wings, no nurses hovering, just a building full of people who had outlived those who were supposed to love them. The walls were thin, the floors creaked, but I slept better there than I had in years. I hung only one picture on the wall. It was the photograph the hospital had taken of my lost twin, the baby who never inhaled his first full breath. His small hand was curled into a perfect, peaceful fist. I traced the blur of his cheek with my thumb. There were no pictures of Carl, not because I hated him, not because I wished to erase him, but because loving him had consumed my life, and losing him had consumed everything else. I needed a space where his shadow did not reach. The apartment manager visited me on my second day. "If you need anything, Mrs. Dunn, you call us. We look out for one another here." I thanked him, but what I did not say was that I had spent a lifetime needing and not being needed in return. I intend to live differently now. Within a week, small packages began arriving at my door. A bag of fruit, a box of supplements, a warm blanket, still folded from the store, a pair of slippers in my size. Each item came with a note. The handwriting was familiar in the way a scar is familiar. You recognize it, even when you wish you did not. For Mom, stay warm. Hope you are eating. Carl never signed his name. Perhaps he thought the omission softened the weight of what he had done. Perhaps he feared I would send the packages back if the truth stared directly at me. But I recognized every curve of every letter. I opened none of it. Instead, I carried each package down the hallway to the common room where the other residents gathered to play cards, read newspapers, or simply wait for time to pass. I chose someone each time: a woman with trembling hands, a man with thin socks, a widow who had stopped expecting kindness. "This was sent to me by mistake," I would say. "I think you need it more than I do." No one questioned me. No one asked why my eyes softened each time I handed something away. They simply accepted the gift with gratitude, and in that small exchange, I felt something heal inside me. Giving away Carl's offerings did not hurt. What hurt was knowing these gestures were the closest he would ever come to an apology. Every few evenings, I noticed a shadow outside just beyond the courtyard, near the fence. Tall, still, familiar. Carl. He never approached. He never called out. He stood there, half hidden behind a tree, watching the window he believed was mine. Sometimes I stood inside the room with the lights off, the curtain barely open, looking down at him, watching the boy inside, the man who finally understood the cost of his choices. Watching the son, who learned too late that mothers do not last forever. He would stand there for several minutes, long enough to gather courage, but not long enough to use it, then leave, shoulders bowed, hands shoved deep in his pockets. I never opened the window. I never opened the door. I never said his name. I had spent too many years waiting for him to see me. I would not spend the rest of my life waiting for him to forgive himself. One winter afternoon, during a small community gathering, someone asked me to share a piece of wisdom. The others had spoken before me, stories of marriages, war, grandchildren, heartbreak, joy. I cleared my throat. "I used to be terrified of losing my son," I said. My voice was steady, almost serene. But I learned something the hard way. The room quieted. You cannot lose someone who never chose to stay. Some gasped softly. Others nodded, understanding more than they wished they did. I continued. I did not lose a child. I lost the illusion of a child I thought I had, and in letting go of that illusion, I found something I had forgotten. I placed a hand over my heart. Myself. Silence followed. A kind silence, not pitying, not shocked, the kind shared by people who know grief intimately. After the gathering, a woman touched my arm. "I hope your son comes back to you," she said. I smiled gently. "He already did," I whispered. "Just not in the way he meant to." She looked confused, but I did not explain. Some truths are not meant to be spoken aloud. Some are meant to be carried quietly, like a photograph of a child you never got to raise, or the memory of a son who walked away long before he realized what he was losing. Each night, when I turned off the light and looked at the single picture on my wall, I felt peace, not joy, not triumph, just peace. Healing does not always come with reunions. Sometimes healing is simply choosing not to bleed anymore, and I had finally chosen that. That is my story, child. A long road of silence, truth, and the kind of heartbreak only a mother can understand. but also a road toward freedom, the quiet kind, the kind you do not notice until your hands stop shaking. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. You listened to a story many people would rather turn away from. Yet these are the stories that happen every day behind closed doors. And if you want to keep walking with me, through the secrets families bury, through the betrayals we survive, through the victories won without raising our voices, then do one small thing for me. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories, not for me, for every woman who was unheard, unseen, or unloved until the very end. For every grandma who still has a story burning inside her chest, waiting to be told. Click that subscribe button, stay close, and come back for the next story, because I still have many truths left to share. And remember, revenge has no expiration date. Wisdom does not shout, it remembers.